In 1868, 3 years after the Civil War, a former war captain named Gideon is traveling through the freezing Ruby Mountains. He takes a break and prepares food over a campfire, but just as he begins to eat, gunfire erupts and a bullet strikes him in the arm. Unable to take his horse and rifle, he grabs his bag and flees down the mountain. His attackers is a man named Carver, along with some bounty hunters he hired to take Gideon alive for his high bounty. The bounty hunters named Hayes, Parsons, Kidd, and Pope tell Carver that it will be easy since Gideon is bleeding and might die soon. But Carver insists they track him as fast as they can, as they cannot claim their share of the bounty if Gideon dies, requiring them to capture him alive. On the other hand, Gideon runs as fast as he can to escape, tumbling down the snowy terrain. Soon, he reaches a river that he needs to cross, but the current is too strong. He attempts to cross on a fallen tree, but he slips into the freezing water and is swept over the falls. Though he manages to survive and climbs back to land, he is freezing and may die from hypothermia. Although shivering, he manages to run away from the river, but stops to lit a fire using some of gunpowder from his bullets. Meanwhile, Carver and the rest see no tracks, but believe Gideon managed to cross the river, so they cross as well. As soon as they do, they smell the smoke from Gideon's fire and rush to find him. On the other hand, Gideon takes the time to extract the bullet from his arm to prevent himself from losing too much blood. When he realizes they might find him by his fire, he leaves immediately, creating fake tracks and erasing his own to mislead them. Soon, Carver and his men reaches the fire and splits up to find Gideon, believing he is not too far. Pope stops by a tree and notices blood dripping from above. When he looks up, Gideon drops his knife onto Pope's head, killing him immediately. Gideon then jumps down, takes Pope's gun, and resumes running down the mountain. When the rest regroup, they realize Pope is missing. Carver warns them to hold their fire, reminding them they won't get paid if Gideon dies. They eventually find Pope's body and discover that Gideon has gutted him for a purpose. Gideon also erases his tracks, and the group can't find any nearby, and Carver relies on his instincts to figure out which direction Gideon might have taken. Meanwhile, as he's running, Gideon spots a house and tries to steal a horse, but he's caught by the owner, a young woman named Charlotte, who holds him at gunpoint. When she realizes he has been shot, Charlotte decides to help, along with his brother Nathaniel, and takes Gideon to their house to tend to his injuries. Later, Charlotte's father Henry arrives and scolds her for bringing Gideon into their home. However, when Henry learns that Gideon was trying to steal their horse to reach the town due to his injuries, Gideon offers to buy it. Henry accepts and allows him to rest for the night. Just before the sun rises, Gideon leaves. Soon after, Carver and the others arrive at the house and question Henry and Charlotte about his whereabouts. They insist they don't know anything, but Kidd finds Gideon's money in their possession, which angers Carver, prompting him to threaten both Henry and Charlotte with the worst that could happen to them. Nathaniel steps in and claims that he stole the money from Gideon's bag and that they did not help him escape. Meanwhile, Gideon discovers that his money was stolen by Nathaniel and becomes frustrated. However, he must press on when he spots Carver and his men approaching his position from a distance. As night falls, Gideon sets up a fire nearby and the group spots it, but when they arrive, Gideon is nowhere to be seen. The next day, Gideon leaves his horse behind and lures them into the woods, where he finds a dead bear caught in a trap. Gideon resets the trap, and when the group follows his tracks, it catches Kidd, severely injuring him. Parsons tries to save him, but Carver ends his suffering with a mercy shot. Fearing they might die tracking Gideon, Hayes and Parsons try to quit the deal with Carver, but Carver reminds them that if they do, they'll have to surrender the horses and walk back, since he owns them, and with no other choice, the two decide to continue on. Meanwhile, Gideon reaches the plains, but along the way, he encounters 3 men and realizes they are thieves. He asks them for water, but they refuse. He continues on, telling them he just wants to be left alone. But as he walks away, one of the thieves recognizes him as a former soldier who single-handedly killed over 100 men after his 2 sons died in the war. The other one doesn't believe it and decides to go after Gideon, fearing he might reveal their location. But before he can shoot, Gideon throws a knife, hitting him in the neck and dying instantly. Gideon takes his horse, gun, and water, and immediately leaves. Soon the pursuing trio finds the body, and Parsons recognizes him as a wanted man with a $250 bounty. He decides to quit the deal with Carver to claim the reward, But as Parsons prepares to load the body onto his horse, Carver shoots the horse, reminding Parsons that it's his horse. Meanwhile, Gideon reaches a railroad construction site and sneaks in to steal some food, but the foreman and his men find his horse, catch him, and knock him down. Carver and Hayes also arrive at the site pretending to be in need of water, but as they enter, Carver begins searching for Gideon inside the camp. Meanwhile, Gideon lures his guard close, knocks him out, and escapes after stealing another horse, avoiding Carver and Hayes. Failing to find Gideon in the camp, Carver and Hayes leave. Along the way, they encounter a group of missionaries and invite them to join for the night, which they accept. Later that night, as they rest, Carver and Gideon both dreamed of a burning house and a woman screaming for help. The next morning, as they continue, Carver discovers that the missionaries have stolen their ammunition. However, he finds one bullet left, which he believes is all he needs to finish Gideon, and they continue on. After traveling for several days through a desert land, Gideon's horse collapses from the heat, and with no other choice, Gideon puts the horse down through mercy killing. When Carver and Hayes reach the dead horse, Hayes dismounts to inspect it and discovers that Gideon had also gutted the horse. He argues with Carver, but Gideon suddenly springs out of the horse's belly and takes Hayes hostage with a knife. But instead of giving up his gun for Hayes' life, Carver uses his last bullet to shoot Hayes and forces Gideon to his knees, unaware that his gun is now empty. Carver then confronts him at gunpoint and reveals that his true intention in capturing Gideon was not for the bounty, but rather something personal. After the Civil War ended, Captain Gideon was ordered to hunt down Carver, who is former Confederate colonel. When Gideon and his men arrived at Carver's home to interrogate him, Carver was out working in the fields with his son. Unaware that Carver's infant child is still inside the house, Gideon ordered the barn to be burned to force Carver's wife to reveal Carver's location. However, the fire quickly spread to the main house just as Carver and his son returned, and Carver was immediately captured. In a panic and an attempt to save their infant child, Carver's wife and son ran into the burning house, but became trapped by the flames and died. Realizing his mistake in the death of Carver's family, Gideon quit his job that same day. Gideon admits his mistake and asks for forgiveness, but Carver insists that only his blood will serve as payment and begins to attack him. Gideon fights back and overpowers Carver, but ultimately spares his life. He points Carver toward a nearby town, warning that seeking revenge will only bring him more pain. Gideon then takes the horses and rides away, leaving Carver behind. After traveling for a while, Gideon finds a pond in the middle of the desert and drinks from it. There, he encounters Karen, who asks for payment for drinking from his pond. Gideon, having lost all his money, can't offer him anything, so Karen asks for one of his horses as payment. Carver, determined to take his vengeance on Gideon, follows him on foot and soon reaches the pond, where he also meets Karen, who now offers him the horse. It turns out Karen is a deity and is giving him a chance for revenge. Carver tosses all of his money to Karen, but Karen reminds him that all things taken by force will also be taken from him. Meanwhile, Gideon stops to decide which direction to take, seeing nothing but endless desert. Unaware of the approaching carriage carrying a woman named Madame Louise, who is also a deity like Karen. As they talk, Madame Louise offers him one bullet in exchange for his horse, and when Gideon sees Carver approaching in the distance, he accepts. On the other hand, Carver and his horse, both exhausted and on the verge of collapse, stop for a while when Madame Louise approaches. She then offers him a pistol with one bullet in exchange for his water, and Carver accepts when he spots Gideon up ahead and immediately chases after him. When Carver catches up to Gideon, and the two finally face off once again, Carver prepares to shoot, but Gideon fires first, hitting him in the side of his stomach, and Carver falls to the ground. Gideon disarms him but chooses not to end his life, and instead offers Carver a chance for revenge. As Carver points the gun at Gideon, he hesitates to shoot him, then throws the weapon aside. Gideon inspects Carver's injury and realizes he may survive, and gives him water and helps him to his feet. After realizing that Carver may have forgiven him, Gideon and Carver begin walking off into the flat desert land. We'd love to hear your thoughts about the movie. Feel free to leave a comment below and share any details we might have missed. If you enjoyed our recap, please give it a like and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more. Thank you for watching.